Morning. Happy Sunday. Well, here we are again. This time, back to the back end of Loaming Telegram. Excuse me. So the last two coding streams have been working on the front end video editor tooling. And I think I want to kind of switch back to the back end for a little bit. Think about what we need to build to process stream recordings and all that. And I think we'll pick up kind of where we left off. So I think where we had left off was with this step function. And maybe, let's see if I can deploy what I have so far. Let's see. Probably want to do cargo build. I think I want to do that anyway. We'll do let me deploy instead of the infra folder. Maybe I'll just open a new tab for that. Infrastructure. Maybe I want to wait until cargo is done. Probably. Let's wait. Let's see. Yeah. So how this works. Refreshing my own memory of how all this is set up, right? So we have the summarized transcription main.rs, so some Rust code, and that is used inside of stream ingestion.py here, right? So we construct a Lambda function where we are using the binary that's built. Probably at some point I need to think about doing this a different way. Yeah. At some point I will want to make it so that what we're doing is we're building Docker images for the different Lambda functions. And in the same way that we're doing Docker images for the batch jobs, and then have the Lambdas use the Docker image. I think that'll be better when we get there. But this works for now. So we have this that is passing in kind of where our OpenAI credential is and the name of the metadata table that this is using to retrieve and store information about the video. And the purpose of the Lambda and this code is to take a transcription that we are generating from a video and summarizing it, and both into a kind of a textual summary that someone could read and be like, okay, here's what the video was about, and then some kind of condensed context that we can use to pass to the next invocation of the same handler to then summarize the next in the series of videos, right? Because there'll be context that'll be important about what was in the first video to then inform the next one. That's the theory. All right, so this built. Let's try Pulumi up. I think there were a couple of changes that I made since the last time we deployed. The step function, I think, should have changed. All right, so it wants to update 3 things and replace 1. Just ignore the diagnostics for now. Let's get rid of the sidebar so we can see what's going on here. Okay, so we have a Lambda function getting updated because we haven't updated summarized transcription, I think. And then we have a step function that's getting updated to point to that new step function. Step function is updated to point to that new Lambda function. And then the role of the API gateway is changing because because why? Oh, because it needs, maybe this role is, why does the role get updated? I don't know. Maybe I updated the role, unrelated to the like changes to the Lambda and step function. I don't know. But yeah, let's go ahead and apply those changes. And then we're also replacing the API gateway integration. I don't really remember because this was 3 coding streams ago, so like 3 weeks ago, if not longer, since we looked at what this is doing. And at main.py, yeah, I think I might have done this off stream actually. So one of the things that I wanted to be able to do is kind of show how you would provide an API, kind of an external API that could invoke the step function. And then because I don't want anyone on the internet to be able to invoke it, I have this set up so that it has to be from my IP address, which is a secret in the project. So that's encrypted. And then it sets up an API gateway and API endpoint to then let you invoke to start execution on the step function. And currently it just expects that, the payload, like the post body of the request, this is a post endpoint, will just be passed in as the input object for the step function, which you probably honestly would not want to do in practice. And then we have okay, it just returns an empty JSON object with a 200 status, provided everything works. Okay, so anyway, so that's some stuff that happened kind of behind the scenes, because I wanted to kind of sketch that out. I'm still debating though. There's some merit, when we get to actually having the front end tied into the back end. There is some merit to essentially using like AWS Cognito for user authentication, and then giving those Cognito users the ability to directly call AWS APIs to like be able to directly run the step function. So then you don't need an API gateway. You don't need to make your own APIs. But that does mean that you are essentially baking in the front end talks to the back end by talking to AWS, which is good from the perspective of AWS, like locking in that solution. But, you then have to consider like, oh, well, I have to redesign how my front end talks to my back end if I ever want to use anything besides this approach. And maybe that's not so great, which is why you might use something like API Gateway, where it's like, okay, here's a solution that doesn't involve me running any servers. I just leverage resources on AWS, but at the same time, I'm just providing just a normal HTTP endpoint that I can implement, using some of their platforms, some of their technology if I wanted to. It's a little bit more flexibility there. So anyway, now that we've deployed that, let's take a look at the step function. Do we have a dark mode? Wow. All right. We have a dark mode. Okay. So if I go back here, just have the one step function. Yeah. I'll leave the definition. So this is pretty similar to what we had looked at before on stream, except that I can actually do like full screen. Look at that. All right. Except that what I realized was that I might want to, and maybe I'll change my mind on this, but I might want to say, hey, if we already have the transcription in the DynamoDB record, like if maybe we run this before, the that we don't need to trigger transcription again. That's kind of a bit of an expensive operation, right? We have to like run Whisper in a GPU enabled EC2 instance to do the transcription. If we already have it, then just go ahead and do the summarization, right? So that's the idea here, is that I added this basically an if statement, right? Or actually more like a switch, the way it's set up, right? So you know what's good? We can go to the editor, which is a much more rich UI for this. All right, so the choice state here, you can have rules, and then you have a default rule. So the default rule is, we'll just go to transcribe audio to text. So if none of the other rules match, it will go ahead and transcribe, and then we just have one other rule, which is item transcription present, right? And then I went back and updated this so that when we retrieve the record from DynamoDB, we also are grabbing the transcription map from DynamoDB record and putting it into transcription, which is then put inside of item. So if it's present, then we just skip to summarizing the transcription. Okay, so now we're caught up, I think, on the back end, and we can probably just run this again. So if I start execution here, it immediately fails because item.transcription.m is specified for field transcription could not be found in the input item key. Okay, so when we're requesting the item, we're doing that wrong. So what does get item look like? Definition. So we have result selector here, which maps it, but we must not be asking for, projection expression. So we're asking for the key and the audio. So I didn't update this to also get the transcription. So let's fix that. So that would be where? Not in, I thought it would be in stream projection. Oh, it's search for, oh, right. It's in the JSON. Right, it's in the JSON. There we go. So this one, we also want to ask for transcription. Exactly. So that's there. Okay, cool. So we'll deploy again. Hooray. Interesting. Why? Why is the role changing? That's really interesting. Can you give me more details? Okay. So we can see here, the state machine needs to be updated because we changed part of its definition. But why does the role need to be changed? Interesting. I guess this is saying it could change because we're waiting. We need the output of. That's interesting. And because we're saying we need to update the role. Yeah. Okay. It's harmless, right? Okay, so it's gonna update some things. The should end up being the same thing. It's going to replace the thing. It doesn't cost. We're not being charged to update these resources, and then it doesn't take very long. Okay, so that should be in place. So let's try the same test. All right, we get a little further. Okay, so this time we get all the way through. It sees that the DynamoDB record, which oh, interesting. Let's take a look at here. So this key is what I provided in the test data. So let's go find that item. So if I query for the key, here's the item. So this is the item that is being retrieved by the step function. This is set up as a loop, right? So I'm actually giving it a list of videos to summarize, so it can like carry through the context of like a whole stream, video to video. But this is the video that I provided in the list, and you can see it has a transcription already. So I can tell immediately this is from one of the Great Tech New Horizons streams. Okay, cool. Not the beginning of the stream either. So that would this will not be a good test of like the overall like how the context carries through. So I have to make a new test where we have like multiple videos that are like from the beginning of the stream all the way through at some point. But right now I'm just trying to get this to work. And we have an error with summarized transcription. And the error was failed to deserialize the incoming data into the function's payload type. So transcription context was a map and it expected a string. That's interesting. So let's look at the state input. Aha. So, we have transcription context, which is an object that has an attribute text. And I think the intent there, let's take a look at what we're doing in the step function. Yeah. So when we run transcribe audio to text, Right, so part of the incentive, like the way I have this set up, is that we essentially take all the step function state and pass it to the Lambda, and the Lambda figures out what to do with it. So that's why we're getting an error, because the state of the step function is a little bit more complicated than what I modeled in the structs in the Rust code. And so we'll look at that in a minute. I realized something here, though. So before I was talking about passing around this context, I think there's two contexts, right? So there's the context for the speech to text transcription that we're passing to Whisper. And then there is, I think, a context that we want to use for the summarization. Yeah. How do I want to do that? Okay, so presently, when the Lambda runs, it gives back a result. We just throw away the result. We don't actually care, because we're assuming that all the information is being put into DynamoDB. And that's why here, the next thing we do is we get the context from DynamoDB, which we carry through. And I wonder if instead what we should do is I think I have an idea. So let's see here. So the reason we have like transcription context at text is because we need to be able to get kind of a slice of the object from the DynamoDB record and put it into place, and so then it's an object. I think if we don't do this, we just get rid of this, which means what we need to do is move this next to here. I'm going to change how this works a little bit. So this is going to be something like this. So basically what I'm saying here is that, well, let me finish the first thought and I'll say the other thing. So what we're doing is we're taking the whole state of the step function, basically everything that we've kind of computed and aggregated together, and passing it to this Lambda function. And then what this is doing is it's saying whatever this Lambda function returns becomes the new state of the step function to then carry on. And I think that's good. I'm going to leave this here. Technically, this is not necessary because this is the default value for result path, I believe. So anyway, we're going to change some things. Oh, I think I have to change one more thing. So I want to change this to just be transcription context. So this will be a string now instead of being an object that has a text key. And so that means that this setup here at the beginning will change to match. All right, so we'll take whatever's in the initial prompt from the input, and we'll put it into transcription context. And then I think what I'll also do is I'll do summarization context. And I'll just start as an empty string. Yeah, that'll be good. So now, basically this is kind of the model of the shape of the object that's going to be coming into our Lambda function. The request. And see, this is the thing I had wrong before, right? So I was thinking, oh, transcription context is going to be a string. It wasn't, it was an object. Now it's going to be a string. And then we have an item. We don't here, but we do because we get an item from DynamoDB. Yeah. What else do we need to have here? So one concern I have right now is that if I don't completely capture the state here, then when I deserialize the request, it's going to be lossy and we won't carry everything through when we return it. And this bothers me. I think ideally, Ooh, okay. Let's change this around a little bit more, because what I don't want to have to do is I don't want to have to either, one, require myself to explicitly name every single field that is in the step function. That's like leaking information that this Lambda doesn't need to care about. So I think what I'll do is I'm going to change this around again. We're going to have a thing called context. Like so. Trailing comma won't be necessary. And then we'll have transcription. Dollar. Yeah, initial prompt. Summarization will be an empty string. There we go. Okay, so now we have this nested object where the context is going to go into. And what I want to do is I want to say context. Nope. Yes. right? So the initial prompt value for the transcriber job will be context transcription. And then for summarized transcription, we're going to change the payload here. I could do this. Because we already have the transcription, we're now retrieving it from DynamoDB here in the step function. We have the yeah, I can do something like this. And do I need the transcription context for the summarization? I don't think so. I might pass it in anyway, and I think the reason I want to do that, do I? No, I'm not gonna do a nested thing here. So we'll say transcription. Where is underscore? There it is. Context. There we go. Also call this context, like so. So this will be the shape of the payload for the Lambda, right? And then in result path, what we're going to do is we're going to say the result path is going to be $.context, right? So whatever the Lambda function returns is going to be put into $.context. Now there is a thing that we also need to do here, because what's going to happen when we invoke the Lambda is that its result, its output, is going to look a certain way. Well, let's see. How can we look like test state? Here we go. Okay. State definition of this task. Oh, I can't edit this here. Okay. Ooh, so what does this do? Our state input is too long. Okay. Well, that's not gonna work. Let me go find the step function docs. Integrating services. Lambda invoke. Request syntax. Now this is the Lambda API. I don't need to see that. I was looking for an example, right, where we are. When the task is returned, the function output is nested inside a dictionary of metadata. So we're looking for $.payload. Now there is a thing that we can do to select a specific part of the output of the particular task and pluck that out. It's called result selector. Let's see. Now, I do want this, right? Because this is going to expect the Lambda function will return an object containing a key called summarization and one called transcription. And we pluck those things out and we make a new object that has just those two keys. And then we put that into this context key in the step function state. So now let's update our definition of what's going on here to match. So this nested struct of item input is going to go away, and we're just going to have a request. That's going to be the input payload, and we don't have to have this fancy rename because we're going to choose to call things. We're going to put the underscores here, right? So I'm just going to get rid of this, and so we're going to have input key, which is a string. We're going to have transcription, which is a string. We're going to have transcription context and summarization context, which maybe I've spelled the same way. Great. Okay, so that's our request struct, and then our response struct needs to match what this is expecting here, right? So we have summarization, which is a string. And transcription. Like so. Okay. I wonder though, at this point we've taken away the need for this Lambda to actually go into the DynamoDB table to get anything. Like, we're going to provide it in the input. Maybe that'll work. We'll see. If we're going to do that, then can we also have the transcription stored in... Actually, I see a danger. Okay, so let's change this slightly. We're gonna do this. We're gonna say this is gonna be, summarization context. That's what this is gonna be. This is gonna be transcription context, because this is gonna clarify like what these things actually are, right? They are the transcription context is honestly probably just going to be the same thing that was provided as input, just to make this part easier. And a summarization context is going to be the thing that we're going to generate, and then we're going to have a summarization. Okay, so let's do that too. I'm going to say summarization. Got it. That doesn't work. We don't need the summarization anywhere else in the step function. So I think what I'll do is I'll keep with what I was originally planning on doing. We won't return the summarization here. The expectation is going to be that this is going to save it. Okay. So I think this now almost is right. We have an error here because we're not. Summarization context is payload. Summarization context and transcription context is this is just to have something just passing through, right? Cool. And we got lots of yellow swigglies because it's called async, but we're not doing anything async here. We will. Okay, so I think this should be aligned with what's going on over here. I want to update kind of the list of comments here. So we don't need to get the result from the transcription. Like, we don't need to get stuff from DynamoDB anymore. So that goes away. We need to get the OpenAI key from Secrets Manager. That's true. Call OpenAI API with the transcription result and context. And transcription result and summarization context. Save the results to DynamoDB. The transcription context. No, the transcription. Right, we're returning Not the transcription either. The summarization. So we're returning the transcription context back that we got. We're probably not going to do anything to it. We will be generating the summarization context. That's like the idea will be this will be a condensed bit of information from what we're getting from the prompt response about this video aggregated with the context from the previous things. I think something along those lines. Let's get this working, like this kind of like the plumbing here working, and I think soon we probably will need to experiment with the OpenAI API. Probably just like maybe we can use Thunder Client or something. I think I hit that tab. There we go. We'll play around with Thunder Client with their API. So let's deploy this. Go from there. It just occurred to me I did not put the keyboard cam tag on, and I had room for another tag, so there we go. Got it. Okay, do we want to... Yeah, it's the same thing. Do it. Override JSON and source JSON things are interesting. I don't think those are things I'm using. I think those are maybe internal things. I wonder if somewhere here we had a message that we can update Pulumi. Okay. Whatever. Let's go and run this again. Now this is a good sign. That means I've not missed any key plumbing things, right? Okay, and then we got an error from the Lambda that we failed to deserialize incoming data into the function's payload type, missing field transcription context. Right, because I didn't actually recompile the Rust code. That's something that is... Ideally, I'd have a way to like deploy with Pulumi up that would handle recompiling things. At least for like this kind of dev setting, right? But I don't, so we should figure that out at some point. We'll just do cargo build. Or alternatively, I could write shell script this like cargo build and then Pulumi up and then run that. I don't know. I wonder if there's a way. Warnings. I wonder if there's a way to make custom commands or aliases. This install suggests there's plugins and stuff, so maybe. I don't know. This is interesting. Pulumi watch as an experimental command. Theoretically, I could be doing that, although I don't know that. Does it prompt you before it changes things based on like, okay, I'm like editing the Python Pulumi code or the JSON here? Will it detect if I make changes here? Or is it gonna prompt me for applying changes? Or it's like every time I save out, I'm going to just go and do it. There we go. Update. Right, so this time the only change was the binary for the Lambda function. So seems like that even takes longer than other things. Okay, and it's done. So now if I could try recover. Redrive from failure is really interesting. So I've not used this feature too much, but I think this lets me kind of continue the execution from where it left, like from where it failed. Right, so we have a state input, and it failed. Hooray! Cause was transcription invalid type map expected to string. Right. So as you can see right here, transcription is a map. It's not a string. What do we want to do about it? There's actually some really interesting info, like in the object. I don't know that I care right now to, for instance, try to ship this information to the OpenAI API to be like, hey, look at this kind of internal stuff and do something with it, versus just the kind of summarize, like the summarize is the wrong word. That becomes an overloaded term. Don't say that. The kind of the concatenated generated text of the transcription. So that would just be like transcription.text.S. So let's update the step function to pass that specifically. So here in transcription, that becomes like transcription.text.S. Whereas transcription and summarization in the context are just strings. Just strings. Context. Okay, so deploying again. All right, and so we can recover again. And it's basically just like it's back to where we were. Interesting. Interesting. All right, that's not going to work because we just updated the step function. This is going to use the previous definition. Actually, I'm surprised this worked at all, honestly, trying to redrive like that. So we want to do a new execution with the same input. That should use the new definition. It's like when we look at... Oh, it succeeded. Right, so when we look at the state output, it should just be like the summarization and transcription that was originally passed to it comes back into the context. You can actually see more details. Right, so here's the raw result from the task. And then we selected payload summarization context and transcription context and put it in context. And so this is what the updated state looks like. I wonder, actually, if maybe there's something I want to change about how this works. So when we get the item from DynamoDB, we do item transcription.m. What we can do is like text.s. So now the transcription in item will be the string. Um, I don't know that that will actually work. And yeah, I'm going to leave this as is for now, I think. I guess something I should test, since I don't think I've actually tested the path that hits transcribe audio to text since I added the choice. Let's test that really quick before we move on to other things. Right, so we have this part of the plumbing working. Let's go find an item in DynamoDB that does not have transcription. It's like this one. Grab that key, and we'll go back here, and we'll say new execution, and here is your key. Start. Ah, yes. Item transcription M could not be found. So that failed. Interesting. Right, so when we are getting the item from DynamoDB, we are trying to pluck out specific things, but this does not exist. I think what we have to do here is I think we just have to get rid of result selector. Right? So everything that gets returned from DynamoDB gets shoved into item. Does that work? No. Right, this is going to be troublesome. Is there a way to say, hey, take $.item, take its contents and put it into result path? Let's see, we want to look at. I saw there was a link here to the processing input and output with step functions. So we have input path parameters, result selector, result path, output path. So result selector is the thing we're using right now. Result path is this. Output path is something else. Unfortunately, I don't think I've ever used output path. It's kind of a thing that I feel. Select a portion of the state output to pass to the next state. Filter out unwanted information. Pass only a portion of JSON you need. Right, so this is like, actually, whatever state after you like shove the result into the overall state, then you only like take part of it and pass it on. It's kind of I get that it does a thing. I understand what it does. I don't think I've run into a use case where I would do that. State output. I think what we have to do is do something a little bit more complicated if we want to do it this way. Or I move the complexity elsewhere. So I guess one thing I could do is I could say everywhere we're talking about $.item, it could be like $.item capital I item whatever. I don't really care for that. How many places do we have to update to do that? Not that many. Let's take a look at the maybe there's some hints for us in. Let's go to the editor. Let's take a look at this task, right? Let's take a look at the info here. Yeah, you can plug out fields, but the fields have to exist. Like if prod was not a result here, then this will result in error as we've seen. Okay. Well, instead of doing something complicated, let's do something simple. So I'm going to change $.item to instead be $DynamoDB. At least that will read reasonably, right? We're going to get rid of result selector. So basically everything we get back from DynamoDB is going to be in $.dynamodb.item with a capital I. Right, so then this becomes like this. Okay. This becomes, in fact, what we do is we can just do Control H, replace, okay, and then in choice, right here, we're saying if $.dynamodb.item.transcription is present, then we can go to summarize transcription. Which has us reading from the item. Now here's a second problem. Because if it's not present, then we go to transcribe audio to text. And so it would be present if we were to retrieve it again, but we don't retrieve it again. So what can we do about that? I think let's see, can we do this? Can we introduce a loop? Yeah, we can definitely introduce a loop, right? We have loops. What does this look like though? Right, so we say, if we transcribe audio to text, then after that's done, go and get the item from DynamoDB again. Right? And then that should succeed, right? We should have the transcription in the item at that point. So then we should not retranscribe. So we won't end up with an infinite loop. Let's see what that definition looks like. So if I were to come back here, we'll hide all of this and just refresh. Behold, it's a little bit more complicated. All right, so we grab a video. We say, hey, get the record of it from DynamoDB. We say, hey, does the transcription already exist? If it doesn't, transcribe it and then get the item again. Does it exist now? Yes. Summarize transcription and then go on and loop. So, does this work? Is this gonna This is not going to do an infinite loop. This will, right, because the part we've not implemented is the part that um, isn't responsible for the transcription. It's the summarization. But we have another error. So transcribe audio to text, parameters, item key. Okay. So the item key that we're passing in to transcribe audio to text is wrong. Right, because we are dealing with a raw record. We didn't transform it. Okay, so let's make sure that wherever we're referring to item here, yeah, that should be key.s now. Yeah, so we made this a little bit more complex, kind of spread that around. But I think that's kind of how it has to be. So let's Control S and redeploy that. And I'm going to take a break for a couple minutes while Twitch runs some ads. And I'm going to stretch my legs. And when I come back, we are going to implement, probably, we're going to do some manual testing of OpenAI APIs and figure out how this is all going to work. And then we'll build that into our Rust Lambda. So, back in just a couple minutes.